agenda, first order of business, review of the minutes. Has everybody reviewed the minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'd like to make a correction, make a motion.
All right, before we make a motion, what did you say, Bobby?
Yeah, fine.
Before you make the motion, stand by. I heard Bobby say something. It was on top, Bob.
Not the one that I had marked.
Oh,
All right, on the comments section, where I was quoted, I want to make a correction. It said that I replied that
okay.
page, there is no page number.
All right.
Question number?
Question number 4.
On the kennel?
There was a comment and said the percentage of lot coverage for the residential units, that was what the question was about. It says that I replied that it's an overall certain percentage of 65% for a 20-acre mixed-use lot. But I also said it still had to meet the setback requirements that we have in the ordinance, which again would apply to question number 6 too. Where it says does not have to follow, I said it doesn't have to follow the setback limit. The sediment basin can be within the setback limit, but the setback limit is still the setback limit. It's only the basins that can be in the setback.
So you're saying question 6 on the second to last page.
Yeah. Bob?
Does the stormwater improvement? is that
Yeah, stormwater improvement.
50 feet away from the property line. You replied, this kind of improvement does not have to follow the setback limit. You want to amend that?
Yeah, it's just that the stormwater basins can be within the setback.
So you want stormwater basins within the setback.
I don't want it to be misconstrued that it doesn't have to meet any setback limits. Just that its basin can.
All right. Sean, can you make that adjustment? Sure. All right. All righty then, make that adjustment and we'll,
One question for you too on the minutes. Can we have whoever does the minutes put their name to it too, so we have a permanent record of who wrote the minutes?
we can do that and we'll add page numbers. All right. We'll make those changes and we'll review it. For the next meeting, we'll push that. Is that all right with everybody?
Sure.
I'm writing down adjustments. All right. Next item was the rewording of the amendment that we worked on a month ago, which is included, that you've had for a month. Does anybody on the board have any comments based on what we've reviewed? And I believe, Tony, you got this prior to you going away briefly.
Yes, I did.
Okay. If nobody on the panel has any questions, I'll open it up for public discussion.
Well, looks like pretty much what we agreed on. At
Bobby?
that point,
Do I have anything?
Any questions before we open
Yeah.
up for public?
The only question I would have is, are we going to write up a list of conditions that should go along with this ordinance for them to review? And each application for this is going to be different, so any conditions that we do come up with aren't going to be for each and every one of them, but something to look at before one's in front of the supervisors.
What are you referring to as conditions?
Like different conditions that they would look at as far as,
For each block?
for every time they come in with a block plan, do they want to have the fire department look at it? Do they want to have the school look at it?
Wouldn't
They
that
want-
be taken
do they want
when
to,
they do come in?
what?
Wouldn't that be when they come in to put in a request to build or develop it?
We can do it then.
Just in the ordinance?
We can do it then. I'm asking, do we want to do this to run with the ordinance? Have a sheet for them to look at. It can be based off the ordinance, not off the construction of anything, just based off the
You're saying
ordinance.
add that to it?
Not added to the ordinance, you can't put it in the
Right.
ordinance.
But like create a bullet sheet.
Yeah.
So that this way, when they get to you, when they apply for the application, they can look at this and say, okay, these are the things I have to meet with.
Yeah, these are the things that you should review that it may affect or not affect.
Basically, a checklist.
Yeah, checklist.
Yeah.
Do the checklist that's in the land development ordinance?
No, this would be a little different than that. I mean, we can do it when it comes in front of us.
Can you say that again so Sean can hear
I
it?
didn't hear what you said. As far as where do you want to put it?
Just in general, a list for the supervisors that have of possible conditions that might go with this ordinance. It's not going to be part of the ordinance, it can't be.
So basically, it's just a policy with a checklist.
Yeah.
I don't know if that has anything to do with this, or if that's something you guys can do.
No, I'm asking if
No,
they
I
wanted to
think-
do that before they,
That sounds like a separate
Because normally
issue,
it's
that if
just-
it's going to expedite, what we should do is ask the governing body if that would help them
It would
going
be
forward.
added to the planning commission application.
Correct.
So
yeah, I said we can do it then or we can do it now.
So we can spell out how many sets of plans have to go to the fire department, how many have to go here, how many have to go there.
Correct, yeah.
You got it.
And the only thing that I saw in the misuse definition is, you have in here where, I think it's just your third sentence, mixed-use buildings are a common feature of traditional town centers, where shop owners live above ground floor businesses. And I think
Which page are you on?
that's on, page number, Article 2 definitions,
Yeah, under the
Okay.
mixed use.
mixed usage.
Mhm.
We consider taking out anything after businesses with a comma, because I think everything after that carries it anyway. And I don't want to confuse the live-work units, because that's actually defined under the state building code law, and it may be a different definition, and
So you're on page 2.
Yes.
Okay, because the first one has definitions too, on continue.
the Article 2 definition says
Mhm.
page 8 of 70.
Mhm.
Your third sentence starts with mixed-use buildings are a common feature of traditional town centers where shop owners live above ground floor
Yep.
businesses. I think you can end it there, and the rest of that that's in there is covered again under, where it says a building or group of buildings under one ownership design.
So you're saying delete
It's kind of
mixed-use
redundant.
buildings?
Yeah,
Okay.
and like I said, the live-work unit thing, people are confused enough now between zoning terms and building terms, and that's actually defined in the building code.
So delete that all the way down to work units. Got it, that's an easy. Everybody following? Deleting that one line?
Do you also want the next line?
Oh, I thought it was-
Yes, it would go all the way over to where it starts, a building or group of buildings.
So you're talking just that particular line, Sean, mixed-use buildings are a common feature to that line or the next line as well?
After the comma, after it says ground floor businesses, comma, and then it says and are sometimes referred to as live-work units.
Just delete that.
Take that out, and then where a mixed-use building is permitted by this ordinance within a development district, the ground floor retail uses are also
Here,
permitted.
just mark that up and give it back to me so I
Oh,
can understand.
I'll give you mine.
Because I'm not following what you're
Take
saying.
that, what's in blue.
So you're saying delete the blue?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
That's a lot easier. And then I'll pass it to everybody else so they can have it.
Makes sense.
And I think your next page, number 2, as far as the amount of parking, it says no less than 2 parking spaces shall be provided for each dwelling. Just put the word unit after your parentheses,
All right.
for each dwelling unit. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments? All right, then we're going to open up for public comments. Before we go over public comments, I want to introduce the constable who's here to maintain good order and discipline, so everybody be respectful. Thank you. So, who had their hand up first? We'll go from the back and work our way up. I believe that's Erica.
Yes, I am Erica Burnett. I live at 377 Foster Hill Road, which is in Westfall Township. But I do want to say that our family owns a few properties, one of which does go into Milford Township, about 5 acres. So our family are tax-paying citizens in this township. At the last supervisors meeting, Mr. Greg Luckby had read some minutes from previous meetings, and I would just like to review some of those and then ask questions. So going back to August 28, 2018, the chairman, Gary Clark, added that this proposal, and I'm talking about the zoning amendment changes, would increase the population of the town by 10 to 20%, and that would impact traffic, fire department, and school. On September 17, 2018, Gary Clark asserted that 2,500 square feet per dwelling unit was actually too small. He also said that we needed to be careful, as everybody will be able to do what we allow them to do. Penny Lors followed up and wondered if bringing any high-paying jobs would be a better option for using this land. On September 25, 2018, the solicitor, Mr. Magnotta, said that the flaw actually exists in the amount of units the Santoses wanted to put, one unit per 2,500 square foot instead of 30,000 square feet. The solicitor added that the chairman of the Board of Supervisors had wondered why Santos had asked for such a small square footage. He did not feel that anybody was keen on approving this amendment. Although 30,000 square feet per unit was too much, 2,500 square feet was too little, and hence the Board of Supervisors was not in favor of it, and this plan needed to be revised. The same meeting, September 25th, Penny also said that the person who wanted to buy the property is putting it every month on hold, and he might back off if the zoning amendment doesn't go through. She asserted that bringing high-income jobs might be a better option than to use the land for retail stores that are not going to be bringing high-paying jobs into our area. Moving to October 1st, 2018, Gary Clark said that he would be careful about making a decision, as once this amendment got approved, all developers would want to base building on 2,500 square feet. He added that we actually wanted to see a lot of jobs, and apartments would not bring a lot of jobs into the town. He proposed that if we could mediate a balance with low square footage that Mr. Oliver was proposing, as he needed to think about what was good for everybody in Milford Township. Mr. Williams then replied that building the residential part would make more money for the owner on that property. Going to November 5th, Gary Clark asked the representatives to move towards a medium number. He offered that putting more commercial items on that piece of land could be another option. On February 4th, one of the residents inquired how this new type of development was going to help the township. The chairman replied that senior citizens like to sell their big houses, live in these apartments where they can walk to the stores. His point was that such a residential development would be more suitable than building a Lowe's store. On February 4th, Don Quick introduced himself as the chairman of Milford Township and informed that he was a supervisor from '96 to 2017. He inquired why the developer of a specific project had presented this amendment. He added that the zoning change should stand on its own. Mr. Clark added that the amendment proposal had arisen from this specific developer, and as such, everyone deserved to hear from that developer. Mr. Clark added that buying a 10-acre piece of land, then building only 12 apartments, is not financially viable. So my question to you is, their concerns all along seem to be ones that many of us have, and are you curious, or maybe you have the answers, to why we have changed and moved in such another direction.
Well, thank you for the recap. As far as the supervisors and what they said, I do not know what their change is. We're looking at the actual wording of the amendment, and that's what we're focused on.
Okay, I would like to make one more comment, and I would just like to say that a few weeks ago, there was a clip on BRC 13 where Mr. Clark said that a new member, Mr. McCarthy, had been appointed to your council and that he would be a tie-breaking vote. And without making any, accusations, I would just like to say that the mere appearance of impropriety is very concerning to all of us,
Noted.
many of us.
Who else was in the back? Peggy?
Peggy Emanuel. So I've been coming to the workshops, as you probably know, since you announced them, Mr. Chris, and not one sentence was ever said about a compromise to the 100 apartments. The first workshop that we attended, you started with 100 apartments, and you did not deviate from that. When I asked you why, you said because that's what the supervisors told us to work with. That to me is not a workshop, that to me is a directive, and you went right to the business at hand with this multi-use ordinance, and that's just not the way I thought things were going to work out.
Noted. Thank you. Fred? Fred Weber, everybody, Milford Borough.
Fred Weber, Milford Borough, thank you so much. My fame has preceded me. Once again, per the sunshine laws, I am recording this meeting, so careful what you say. It will be recorded. Question was, thank you for being the sole member that showed up to the borough workshop with the member from Harrisburg from the Planning Commission. And I was just wondering, did that create some more questions for you, or did it close some loopholes for you, or where are you as one of the nay votes right now? Have you seen enough?
I was just more interested in what he had to say and see how it affected people out there.
So as far as what he presented, looking at a comprehensive plan, how that all ties together, and this plan, and this amendment proposal that we have right here, how do you feel what's your feeling about that? Does this make sense?
There's not a tight tie in it, because you don't have to go by everything. That's what I wanted to see if he was actually going to bring up, and that is what he brought up. That nothing is in concrete. It's still up to each individual municipality to do it their way. And that's basically what he said.
All right, so since there was no real discussion about the amendment as it's currently written, you feel comfortable that you have all the information necessary?
We'll find out.
Yeah, we will. Mr. McCarthy, welcome.
Thank you.
Question for you, just a little background. How long have you been at this? How long have you been doing planning board work?
Planning board work, I just got on it. Thank you very much. But as far as my involvement with construction industry, I've been involved with it for 22 years. Lifelong resident of here. I've lived in borough, I've lived in township.
So having had 2 weeks to look at this plan, probably haven't been here, well, you haven't been here to hear all our concerns and comments. Do you see any faults, any flaws, anything that you're not comfortable with?
Not that I have found out, and I'm still digesting some stuff, but I haven't seen anything that stands out as a red flag.
So you would not be ready to vote tonight?
I feel as though I have enough information to vote.
After 2 weeks?
Well, I think I'm doing okay, because I have been following it throughout the newspapers and other media and stuff like that. So I've got enough information, I believe that I'm doing okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me, Fred, I have a question. The meeting in Milford, that was an actual workshop?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Was a workshop?
It was a workshop for the planning commissions, yeah.
It was a planning commission workshop.
The original workshop was supposed to be held here at the Milford Township building, but since many of you could not make it that night, it got moved to Milford.
So it was
Penny
a
Lors
workshop.
did attend.
When was that scheduled?
The last workshop was
The last,
It was June 10th.
Well, I know the night, but it was scheduled as a workshop. and-
you're on the schedule for planning workshops every month.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, my name's Doug Housekeeper, and I've attended a few of these meetings. I just want to talk from personal experience. We moved from Fairfield 40 years ago, and Fairfield kind of did the same thing you guys are going through, thinking of taking their zoning and so forth. Well, by the time I left, there were 30,000 cars in and out of Fairfield. And we came here, which is pristine, nice, and a good community. And I'm just afraid if you guys do the same thing, we're going to end up with the same kind of traffic jams, police increase, and some of the crime that went on in Fairfield. And that's one of the reasons we moved out this way, to avoid all that. And I just saw a development, probably some of you that travel 206 north past Lafayette on the left there. It's a similar kind of thing where they're going to have stores and then apartments at back of it. If you can see how big that is going to be. And I also have the same concern. That lady brought up about the supervisor. How could you make your mind up before the meeting and say there's going to be a tiebreaker or there's going to be no, that's, and I realize that's not your cup of tea, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, sir.
Fairfield, New Jersey or Connecticut?
Fairfield, New Jersey,
I thought-
right, yep, 40 years ago.
I don't miscommute in there.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
And it was a farm town and everything, and then they changed the zoning. Housing went in like overnight, mushroom. And if you look at the ads on the television, it now says Big Piece Road, Fairfield, Horseneck Road, all these different ads for 1995, these special bargains. It's all industrial. You wouldn't know the town now. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
It's in the floodplain too.
Huh?
It's in the floodplain too.
And and they got away with doing that, and years later, the houses started sinking. That's correct. Yep, you got it.
Regis Lake.
Who had their hand up
Go ahead.
first? I don't know.
I'm a newcomer, so Bill, please.
Jim, you've done a nice job, a thorough job in defining land use for this amendment. But what is worrisome is that there's no impact statement as to what's going in here. 100 apartments, 200 plus people, 200 plus parking spaces, the effect on taxes, the effect on services, the effect on the school population, etc. Does that worry you? Do you feel you should have that information?
Well,
Before-
I do have that information. Let me just share some things with you. Based on the census in 2010, we had 57,000 people living in Clay County. As of 2018, we're down to 55,000, so we've lost 1,430 people. Population density in 2010 was 105 per square mile. It's down to 102 per square mile. Interesting other facts that we need to understand about our community and where we live is comparing the two. That's the county numbers. When you look at Milford Township, our population and our density for 2010 was 1,530, and we're now down to 1,462 people. We've lost 68 people. That means our density went from 117 per square mile in our area, in the township, down to 112.46. On the other side, we have Milford Borough, who their population went from 1,021 people in 2010 per the census, all the way up to 1,124 in 2017 and 18. Their total population density per square mile is 2,042 people for 2010 and 2,248 for current right now. So looking at that and combining both of those numbers to include the overall county, which is 543 square acres, we are going to be, if a maximum of 800 apartments gets put in, our maximum density would go back to the 2010 numbers. Another interesting fact about that, based on the population density, and we're now below what we were in 2010, what's even stranger is our taxes have slightly gone up for county, which includes your fire, your ambulance, and your school. And the main thing driving this, the taxes for the county happens to be the school, which people are not understanding that we were at 100 mills in 2010 and 100.85. We are currently, if the new 2.84% gets approved the next month, will put us up to 113.85 mills. Now let's compare that, because you said taxes are going to go up based on personnel. Since 2010, I've just told you, based on census data, our numbers have gone down, our taxes have gone up. Not due to population, because obviously if we lose people, we should assume less taxes. The other factor is our overall enrollment in DB is down 729 students. So the last thing that I'll share before I get off this topic is that we're down 729 students. The census information that has been put out by the National Association of Home Builders, they've calculated 100 apartments and how many school-aged children live in maximum multiple family use houses and apartments. Of apartments, Pennsylvania only averages 17 school-aged children per 100 apartments. So if you take that 17 times the 800, you have 136 students, which would then put our enrollment a little higher, but still below what we were operating at in 2010. So yes, we've analyzed this data. We have that data. We're providing that data to the supervisors as part of our amendment recommendations. And so they can then look at that. And these are just my notes of the top level items. It's almost 40 pages.
What about the congestion on the infrastructure?
You want to talk roads? Oh, thank you for reminding me. The roads, interesting fact, you know when you're driving on a road, you hit those little lines and you can see the things going across it, they start clicking it. The Department of Transportation has actually changed those up a couple times. So their data is actually a little askew as far as the numbers. I'll give you, in 2010, from halfway from Route 6 down to 84, there were 7,700 cars per day for the day they put the thing out there. Now let's go to 2016. They have the same part on their little map on their website at 6,600 cars. So that went down. They've actually tracked the number of cars from 84 down to Harford Street, the light, and then from the light down the 3-lane to Matamoras. So I'll give you the bigger ones. From Broad Street to down the 3-lane, in 2010 you had a daily average of 13,000 cars. Then in 2014 it went to 14,000 cars. 15 it was 15,000 cars, and in 2016 it was 15,000 cars, stabilized there. They don't have the stuff on the website for 17 and 18 and 19 yet. I don't know why. And then in interesting fact, Matamoras through over to Port Jervis, that is your highest traffic. From 2010, 17,000 cars to 16,000 in 2014. And then in 2015 and 16, it's 15,000. That's your highest traffic area. And by the way, I gave you the population density on Milford Borough in my supporting documentation. Milford Borough is dense as far as population based on their square mile. Matamoras is the most congested and the densest of all. So that's also all the data that's going to be there. Also, another interesting fact that I want to share with you based on the taxes. I went and I looked at all the properties as far as the tax rate and what was going on. Because people say, how do you know if there's going to be a return on the investment and the tax revenue? Well, by actually looking at the millages and coming up with the numbers, I was able to, what page is it on? There it is. Our current tax that we've made, 4 and 5, there it is. For 2017, on the properties that were listed on the build-out study for the township, made $2,215.80 because we only get 10 mills for the township. The rest is all school and county tax. In 2018, that went up to $8,973.80. That was because of EconoPack was built out and started paying into it. And it was the same amount for 2019. As far as county taxes, all this items on the build-out study paid a total of $126,034.22 in county taxes. So I said, okay, we've looked at everything on the build-out study, the taxes, the revenue. I asked what level of support would these structures get if they're built here, there, and all these build-out study? Because they're in a private area, they're not going to be township roads, they're off a public road, we wouldn't be maintaining the roads, which apparently is, according to what I've heard, our biggest cost driver in the township. So it wouldn't impact our 10. So we looked at the county, and we know they're getting $126,000 from all those areas based on the assessed value. I then looked at, okay, the Dollar General is new. It's not a mixed use, but it's new. So it was a lot, right? I don't know. Was it a lot before, or was it always Dollar General something? I don't know. I haven't been paying attention. I leave the country and come back every now and then. So the Dollar General, their total tax that, based on their assessed and original value, is $17,164.20 that they pay into the county and into the township. So we are deriving a benefit, and quick back to the thing, talking to the roadmaster, they don't do hardly any support over there. So there is a business case. We've done the due diligence, we've looked at everything, and the increase in personnel doesn't necessarily drive taxes through the roof. It doesn't. But it has been looked at, it's been studied, and it's going to be provided to the supervisors, all 40 pages, so they'll have time to digest prior to whenever they do their magic. Interesting. Do you have any other questions?
If I may ask one more question. What is the procedure or next steps? Let's say you don't vote it through tonight. What are the next steps? And converse to that, if you pass it, what are the next steps before it becomes a reality?
I will default to our magical attorney over here. We just got back from convalescent leave, so.
Thank you, Jim. The Planning Commission is an advisory body only, so the Planning Commission would be forwarding the zoning amendment to the supervisors with the recommendation. Before the supervisors can pass a zoning amendment, the amendment has to be reviewed once again by the Pike County Community Planning Agency. Those comments have to be received, and the supervisors have to hold a public hearing. It would be after the comments from county planning and after a public hearing that the supervisors would be in a position to act on the amendment.
And to make life easier, I would love to send my 40-page document along with whatever goes to county, but we just tried it on one of the other ones, and they said, no, we just want the quick wording, we want to be able to look at that. So they should be able to look at all the data that we have. So we'll try one more time as a separate document to see if they'll accept it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Amy Eisenberg. I'm a resident of Milford Township. I'm also a second-generation business owner in Milford Borough, the Milford Craft Show directly across from the library. I am a relative newcomer to these.
Sasquatch.
Yes, I'm the Bigfoot story, yes. So I'm a relative newcomer to these meetings. I just started showing up in April. I should have shown up earlier, and I apologize for that. I feel like I let the community down. I think there's a lot more that we should be doing collectively. Having attended the planning workshop on June 10th, I learned a lot from the state representative about the planning process, about I'm not fluent in Saldo, but I know a little bit more about it. I know about comprehensive plans. I know that input and participation by the citizenry is really important. And I also, based on the gentleman who presented it, Mr. Ted, I also know what his extensive experience are qualifications for a planning commission candidate. I'm alarmed by the relatively short tenure of our Milford Township Planning Commission as individuals. Other than Patrick a little bit and Larry a little bit on a personal level, I don't know the rest of you. I do know that you were not present at the planning workshop. That I wasn't at the last supervisors meeting, but I did watch the video of the supervisors meeting. And by her own admission, Penny organized it. So it was a Milford Township. I guess the word is not event, but it was an event per se. And the fact that there was no communication via the website that there was a change of venue. It was moved to Milford Borough and it was held without you gentlemen in attendance. I do appreciate your service. I think it was a missed opportunity for all of us.
Okay, well, thank you. I just want to let you know that the actual person that presented it, they have online training. Rachel sent it to us and I've sent it to everybody. I've completed my certificate months ago. And just for your edification, I've been a service-disabled veteran, government contracting officer on limited warrant, studying and analyzing base plans all over the world to include housing and all of these items, dealing with very complex construction contracts and construction management. So I understand these regulations and how to work them. Yes, we haven't gone through the complete comprehensive plan, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I'm hoping to get to tonight is we're going to talk about number 6, the annual report, which we're required to do, and our comprehensive plan, which we're required to do, and figure out from these gentlemen what sections they want to take over for the workshop, and then solicit from the township residents, how do you want us to approach the comprehensive plan? That's eventually going to happen tonight, if we get to all these other things. So I just saw somebody, oh, there he is, with a tie that has an issue that we have to talk about too.
And I appreciate.
I can wait, I'm late.
No, that's all right.
I do appreciate your experience. Again, concerned about the divergence from the comprehensive plan. I also don't understand between the supervisors meeting and, there was a tone set earlier in this meeting. There's a strange animosity in comparison to the borough that perhaps I'm very naive and don't understand. I don't know why there isn't greater partnership and a broader conversation. I don't understand that. Per your commentary, and I respect your experience with regards to military and data analysis, being at the forefront of retail business in Milford Borough, seen a lot of difference since 1993. Since 2001, there was an exodus out of the city. People were leaving the suburbs and they were converting what were vacation homes into primary homes here. We had an explosion of year-round population. The schools responded to that. Our taxes went up as a result of it. I think the shrinking in population that you're seeing is a direct result of the fact that we are not set up to be a bedroom community. And I think that the economic development branch of the county has failed us, and perhaps our planners have failed us in designating places where we should be establishing commercial businesses and entertaining that and hosting that and welcoming those folks to the table rather than entertaining the thought of high-density housing. We don't have jobs for our residents. We're forcing them onto the roads for an hour to 2 hours each way every single day. If you put apartments on Santos Farm, you are eating up the potential of there being jobs on that same land. And that's what I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you. He had his hand up first, ma'am. Sorry.
My name is John. I'm a resident here in Pike County, like this gentleman, for 40 years. I just have a couple questions, if I could, please, with regard to well, first of all, thank you guys for your service. We appreciate it very much. I'm sure you have the best interest of all involved here, so thank you very much for that. I think that where the borough starts at the Shell station and goes all the way up through Westfall Township, I believe it's inevitable that with all the property that's available and all the for sale signs that are on there, that this, no matter what happens, no matter what goes there, it's going to be developed as it has been since when I got here in 1983, all the way through now, it's been inevitable that we're looking at a building right here, Dollar General, the tire store, Tractor Supply. It's going to be developed no matter what. And so I think, as Ms. Erica mentioned before, Ms. Loers brought up the fact that it's more, what she's looking for was the quality of the development as opposed to whether or not it's an apartment or if it's going to be a business. I think Ms. Heisberg made an excellent point. It takes away resources from potentially keeping dollars in the county by keeping individuals working here. However, the question I have is, and I don't even know if it's public knowledge, but let's say, for example, the 100 units go through. Does anyone, or is it public knowledge, what the cost or the rental per unit would be?
We don't have access to that, and just so everybody understands, when you have a parcel of 20 acres, it's a maximum up to 100 because they're doing mixed use, but it's based on lot coverage, which is 65%. So if they take that 65% and they use 40% or 50% for commercial, and they put in a storefront, they have the difference that's remaining, so 15% to build, and they wouldn't be able to put 100 apartments on the remaining portion of that because they can only go, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, 45 feet high and cover that particular area. So there's no way they'd be able to get it. So that's what everybody just needs to understand. There's checks and balances built in there based on the lot coverage, what they're allowed to do, the conditional use, how they can approach it, and to the fact that even at this level, if they put an application in, the supervisors have the ability to make adjustments and corrections based on things as well, along with, as we heard earlier from the attorney, the county. So there are checks and balances and things in place to make sure that it's not always going to be a maximum of 100 on that particular area.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying.
Just so that everybody understands we're on the same sheet of music.
That's good to know.
He's not done.
Well, my follow-up question to that was, if you were to use the new apartments that were put in the borough on the Van Tile, or the Vandermark Creek that was just put in there by Mr. McDonough, the average cost, the average price of the, you look perplexed now?
No, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where this place is.
By the Shell station.
Behind.
Behind the Shell station on the Van Tile, what's called the Vandermark Creek, right there.
Okay.
Right by Greenwood Hills. The average rental there is between $1,500 and $2,000 a month. Right, so, what's that, sir? I'm sorry.
I said that's why it's about 4 people in there, because of that price.
Right, so, but it's a much smaller proposal. What that went through is a much smaller idea, so, the question I have is, if that was going to be, say, a similar model to that, and even if a percentage of that property, the Santos property, was to be developed into apartments, my question is there anything that would prevent the rent from being high to keep a certain level of individuals in there, or is there possibility of it being government subsidized so that it would become Section 8 qualified?
I would defer to...
Is that possible?
I really don't know. Unless there's a proposal pending, I wouldn't be able to.
The reason I'm asking is it goes back to what Ms. Erica said, that Ms. Loers brought up, it's the quality of the development. So I'm sure that none of us want government subsidized Section 8 housing, which brings, I think, in my opinion, I'm not trying to classify it, but there's more crime involved, there's more that kind of thing.
Statistics.
What's that? No, I'm open for rebuttal. And the reason I ask is...
I don't think they've gotten to that. We don't have an application, we don't have a business case, so we only know what we know about the amendment and the wording.
So if it was to be approved, no matter what size unit it is, there's nothing that says that they can apply for government subsidies, or it can be raised so high that it keeps a certain level of clientele in
It's
there.
their business case, we wouldn't know. Whomever bought whatever and did whatever, that's
You see my question, though, where I'm...
Yeah, I understand. I understand your concern and everything. Yeah.
As opposed to that, like Ms. Eisenberg here mentioned about, let's say that the housing unit goes away, that whole project, everything gets shelved and gets sent off, they lose interest, they don't want to go through all this stuff anymore, and a box store goes there, or something else. That negates any kind of government subsidies and anything like that, which I think raises the quality of the development, as opposed to the question mark that maybe if you put housing in there and it's out of the township's control, and it's strictly a developer or a, a business plan that they come up with, and they say, well, we're going to charge X amount of dollars per month in rent, and they're going to hopefully attract a certain amount. You don't know that.
We're not at that stage or anything, this is just the wording on the amendment, so that's
Okay.
hypothetical.
Maybe it's premature to ask that
Yeah, yeah.
question.
Good questions, but we're just not, we don't have a business case.
I'm just more concerned about the quality. It's going to be developed. I mean, we have to just, everybody's got to just get used to that.
True.
But it's just the quality of the...
I saw, was it Peg? Oh, Peg.
Yes, yeah. It's not that we're against development. I mean, we've lived here long enough to know that that is going to be developed. It's just that it needs to be done responsibly. And a question also, not even a question, is a comment about you using the 20 acres. There are parcels that are 40 acres and...
Well, what we did is for the different options we looked at, we went from 30,000 all the way down to 3,000 square feet. 3,000 square feet, if you take a 20 acre or greater parcel and divide it by that, outrageous number of dwelling units. So then we were given guidance to look at 100. So we looked at 100 per 20 acres, and that was an outrageous number. So we said, okay, let's come up with a maximum of 100 based on the lot coverage, and if they use 50% for the commercial, they have 15% left for the apartments, there's no way they can get 100, so they'll have to come up with their own way to figure it out. So in order to get 100 apartments, they would have to build those first, and then the remainder would be the commercial, and vice versa. But we've looked at all these options to come up with a win-win for the community to control this, that, and the other thing. And by saying, no matter if it's 20 to 300 acres, I think that's one of the bigger ones, you can have a maximum for mixed use of 100 dwelling units.
Unless you subdivide.
That's another issue that we can, yeah. But wait, Bobby's wife had her hand up if she still has a question.
No, I think you've answered that. Thank you.
According to the proposed amendment, it does say that 75% could be allowed.
That's if they want to develop, they have to come back to the supervisors and give justification and a reason why.
But it's, the 65% is not a hard, fast number.
65.
Just a clarification on that. That's not a change. That's, the present ordinance says that. It can go up to 75%.
That's already in
Can I ask for clarification on that?
Yes.
Tony, is it presently that applies to commercial development?
Yes.
But, so now, by virtue of the mixed use, it's being allowed to apply to the residential side in a way that it never was before, isn't that correct?
In the DD district, it applies
In the
throughout.
DD district, but it would now apply to residential development
Right, there
in a
were
way there
no,
hasn't before.
well, your question is, it applies to the DD district. Presently,
Right,
you can go to 75%.
regardless of whether
Correct.
it's residential or non-residential?
Correct.
And that's been in the ordinance for a while.
That was changed, I think, in 2008 or 10.
But they have to come to the supervisors and present their case. And obviously, I'm assuming have a public hearing and such.
That would be a conditional use here.
Yes.
Can I just ask one final question, sir?
Yes, and then I got to go back to the...
No problem. Just one quick thing. If I could just clarify this. So let's say, for example, there's enough room on the property to put 100 apartments. And then, as you mentioned, squeeze in the rest in retail. Is that correct?
Yeah, the 65%.
Okay. So let's say, for example, they want to put 100 residents in and a tobacco store. That's allowable?
I'd have to look at the list. Sean, do you have it memorized?
There's no clarification what a tobacco store is, it's retail sales.
Retail sales, that's right.
I think nobody wants Tobacco Road in Milford.
It's,
I already have one.
it's I'm not trying to be smart when I say this, are you familiar with the Katz case? $21 million that Westfall had to pay?
No, sir.
Because they pinpointed a use instead of a general. So if we say retail uses are allowed, we have to, but if a tobacco store comes in, we can't say, we don't want you here.
I see.
And then we start cutting checks.
All right, so potentially that could happen.
Yeah, you have to classify it, not just to regulate stuff like that, like, they can't have drug paraphernalia and things like that in
Sure.
there, but if it's retail, it's retail.
Understood.
So,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jim, has senior housing been considered as a qualifying condition for this or any other development?
I've heard it was talked about, or somebody mentioned it, but I don't
You
think.
can't regulate what can go
You
in.
can't, no.
You still gonna put the playground in?
It's part of the planning phase if there was an application. So we don't have an application, so I don't know what they're doing or what anybody's doing on any development until there's an
I think
application.
under your subdivision, they have to have a recreation.
Yeah, they have to have it, but until there's an application, I don't know.
Okay.
This is,
I just wanna make sure that it's in the
yeah,
notes.
Doug, trust me, it's in the notes because people need to run around. Wait, Phyllis had her hand up a while ago. I don't know if she's had a question.
I was asking for clarification.
Oh.
The meeting that was held in the Borough Building, right, was that a formal workshop, or was that, my understanding is a gentleman was coming who represented a company that has given direction and guidance for a fee on how to create comprehensive plans. Wasn't he from a
I
company?
thought he was a
No,
state
he's from the
employee.
state employee. He was representing.
And the reason,
And his focus was on comprehensive plans, am I correct?
Yeah.
and the reason we didn't have a quorum, I had to go down to DC because I have my own business and my clients are there. So I had to do things like that, so I couldn't make it. And I guess these gentlemen, Pat wasn't available because he had to work and he's always out cutting grass. So without a quorum, we can't cut grass or because everybody else
Technically
does.
be a workshop.
We couldn't have the workshop, so then it went over there to support them because they had a quorum, I'm assuming. I don't know.
I really
I was
don't.
able
I
to
was
see
at
the
meeting.
video a couple weeks, was it 2 weeks ago? I think a couple days ago I watched the video, and everything you went over was all the training you take online, you take a test to get your certificate for. Just so everybody knows.
But it was focused on comprehensive
It was
plans.
100% focused on comprehensive, yeah, trust me.
And there were members of the audience who are here, who, like myself, who attended that.
I recognize your voice, but I couldn't see you, but I'm like, oh, I know that voice.
I don't know if I'm right.
Because there wasn't a lot, it was just him up front and a blurry thing and a lot of voices, what you could hear, but. Wait, maybe somebody else. Rachel had her hand up first before I.
I have a few things I wanted to ask about. Tony, I know that you've been away and ill, and I'm sorry to hear that. At the supervisors meeting, I asked Penny Lors if they had asked you for, I asked the supervisors if they had or would ask you for a written legal opinion indicating that should this ordinance change pass, while we do not yet know if it is feasible or even possible to extend the sewer lines here, could the town be forced to implement the sewer system? And she said that she was going to ask you for that, but I know you said you were just back, so,
I haven't been asked by the supervisors for that opinion, Richard.
well, I would ask this board that you should ask Mr. Magnotta for that in advance of making a recommendation on this, because you're potentially implementing something in the ordinance for infrastructure that we don't currently have available, and the study is underway, it's just beginning, we don't yet know if it's going to be economically feasible, if the DRBC or other governing bodies will approve the extension of the sewer line, and I think it would be prudent for us to have a written legal opinion.
Just to clarify, Rachel, I can say this, that the intergovernmental agreement that I reviewed for both the borough and the township, by its terms, gives the borough and the township the right to make a final decision based upon feasibility. So if the project, if the study is done, which I understand just got underway recently, a year or so from now when it's finished, if either the borough or Westfall Township or Matamoros or Milford Township decide that it's not feasible either economically or geographically to do this, they can opt out of the project.
And yet we may have an ordinance change on the books that allows for a density bonus that is contingent on infrastructure that we may decide we cannot provide. And the word feasibility can really be interpreted differently depending on what individuals are making that call. I once had a lively debate with a DEP representative who told me that there should be no cost limitation because the environment is priceless. So it really can be a very subjective term, and we're potentially implementing a change in our ordinance that's contingent upon that infrastructure when we don't know yet if it's going to be backbreakingly difficult, if it's going to be overly expensive, or if we can get regulatory approval to extend that infrastructure. I really do think it would be prudent to ask Mr. Magnotta to do a written legal opinion so that he has research and case law to protect this governing body, to protect our township from the potential that you implement an ordinance that I would think could be viewed as inducing property purchasing, and yet not be able to deliver the infrastructure. So that's certainly a concern. Looking at your documentation that's on the table today as compared to last month, I just have a couple of questions. On page 2, in the bottom section, all land proposed for multifamily dwelling project shall be contiguous. I thought we had a discussion about that at the last meeting, and that there was concern that that was new language, that it would not have to be common ownership with that definition, and that was going to be changed to indicate that it would be either a singular parcel, or that it would have to be improved to be a 20-acre parcel, as opposed to contiguous, where you could have multiple property owners whose land is contiguous. Under number A, beneath there, I had a note that you all had indicated you wanted the language changed to say, land contained within rights-of-way owned by or under the control of a third party, as opposed to the language that remains there, public rights-of-way.
That was actually, Rachel, that was changed for our discussion on the first page, under the control of the right-of-way owned by, that was the only place it was discussed, which is on page 1, under contiguous acreage. What you're referring to are standard wording that's always been in there that has not been changed, and we didn't address that last time. So what you were talking about is right here on page 1. And that was changed to say third parties, under control of a third party.
As far as the rights-of-way.
Correct.
And my understanding of the other change with the land being contiguous was that that was new language at the last meeting,
No,
and that was
the
going
one
to
you
change
just
back.
mentioned, the first one, all land proposed for one shall be contiguous. If it's not bolded or highlighted, it's the standard wording. The only thing that we changed were the bolded or the highlighted, and that's the way this whole amendment's been operating. So. I don't know if she's done yet. I think she said she had a
Also
couple
on
more.
page 5, minimum yards for 50-plus acres. At the last meeting, it said 150 feet, and the one that you have out today only says 100 feet.
That was changed to match the 20 to 50 acres from above the 100 feet that was discussed. So that's why it was changed to 100 feet for the 20 plus.
Mr. McCarthy, welcome aboard. I did want to ask you if you had the opportunity to review the comprehensive plan.
I'm in the midst of reviewing all of that now, digesting it,
And the build-out analysis.
working on it. So I'm reviewing all the information that has been given to me. Well, that's what I can say.
Don't you think that it would be prudent to have completed that review before you pass the vote? Because this is a pretty important change.
Oh, absolutely, it is an important change. And with being a lifelong resident here, with my background, with my love of this area, I take all that into consideration.
I will tell you, since you have not been at these meetings, that there has been a repetitive theme of requests that the 100-unit level be reduced, that is too dense, that it's too many units for our community. And that's a comment that I think that since you haven't been here, I just want to reiterate for you so that you're aware that many folks have spoken up saying that they think the scale is too dense for our community and wildly different than what we are accustomed to and what people think the character of Milford Township should be.
I am aware of that. I have been following this, maybe I haven't been here in person, but I have been following it. And with all the data that has been received and put forth, I don't see it as being a major threat to us at this point. I do see that us putting this through, or at least getting this wording changed, is going to be beneficial to us, because if we don't be proactive, we're going to have a knee-jerk reaction to somebody else who comes along and wants to do something. So, I mean, in one instance, what we're doing is we're laying the groundwork so that somebody doesn't come in and steamroll us.
You're under no obligation to make a change to the zoning ordinance, so you have the time to make the change as appropriate as you think it should be, and as the community thinks it should be. The knee-jerk reaction is an interesting comment in that it was and is a developer who initiated this discussion, though the ordinance proposal has changed many times since then. It was a reactionary start to this process. And I reiterate what many people have already said, that I think that folks have come around, you folks that were of the don't build anything in my backyard opinion initially, to the concept that yes, this is an important section of our community that potentially has the possibility for sewer to see development, and we want it to be the best possible development that it can be. And we want it to have the character and the flavor that we think Milford Township should bring to the table and that we already have.
I'm with you.
Okay, very good.
All right,
Thank you.
Mrs. Bobby?
Yes, I would like to propose, since there's 20 acres, that the maximum they could build is 20 apartments or condos, preferably, instead of a high-density living units. I feel that if we put a number on it, because there's more than one parcel in the township, that this way we know what we're going to get. We need more development, we need more jobs, high-paying jobs. And I think that's what we should be targeting the available uses for. And I do hope you guys take into consideration how this is going to drastically change Milford Township, Milford Borough. And really take that into consideration and make good decisions for us all.
No.
Because I would also like you to add into your ordinances that whatever businesses come in, that they are responsible to take care of their own litter, that we should not be picking it up, it should not be blowing all over the place either, because when you come down to 3-lane and you get hit with the Walmart, McDonald's area, it's atrocious. That's not what I think Milford Borough and Milford Township want either.
Understood.
Unfortunately,
Wait.
enforcement issue.
He had his hand
Okay,
up.
well, either
And
way.
they have
it in
shown
your
that.
ordinance.
Just back around.
Okay, as long as it's in your ordinances,
Bill
great.
Pittman, Stroyan Lane. In listening to all this, I haven't been coming to all these meetings for a great period of time. Seems to me where you got the horse in front of the cart in front of the horse here. You know, we want to make a change, but the change is based on whether we can get sewer in here. I don't understand why this amendment is even being proposed at this point. We should be doing the sewer, and then deal with it. If you're trying to accommodate these developers in that, hey, I could care whether they show up or whether they're in business here or not. But I mean, to do an amendment, and the amendment states that something can't be developed unless a sewer line is run, makes no common sense to me to even be considering an amendment prior to knowing if the sewer is going to run down here.
Understood. I don't know who, Rachel first?
Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead. Pat, I just wanted to ask you if you are familiar with the term spot zoning,
Yes.
and how have you reviewed the parcels that are listed in the build-out analysis as qualifying for this potential development? And do you understand that there is a huge section of those parcels that are not in the area that is currently proposed for the sewer study, and currently has absolutely no potential to have sewer, although perhaps in 50 or 100 years it does. The proposal that we have on the table right now, those 11 parcels goes down to 4, 2 of which are publicly owned parcels. So that leaves 2 properties that have the potential to have sewer in the next, let's say, 15 years that would qualify under this amendment. So how would you view that in terms of the reference to spot zoning, as well as, since you have not completed your review of the comprehensive plan, the other way that you would determine that is largely through its consistency with the comprehensive plan?
I haven't been able to go out and physically review the properties or anything like that, but that I'm working on it, is all I can say.
Wait, Erica,
I'd just like
wait,
to-
no, the gentleman in front of you first, then Amy, then you.
Okay.
And then we're going to wrap up the public, so, go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, I applaud Mr. Stroyan over here for reading some common sense into that whole thing. That was brilliantly said. Thank you. And to this young lady over here who wants to, or you had mentioned to put it in public record, 1 unit per
Acre.
1 acre.
20 units.
So currently, an acre is over 45,000 square feet, so that's 1 unit at 45,000 square feet.
Yes. And then plus they're mixed use, they're stores,
Right,
hopefully
so
good
I believe you had
businesses.
mentioned, Mr. James there, that the current proposal is at 3,500 square feet per 1 unit?
No. We're not talking about square footage. When we did our study, we looked at taking a property from, dividing it by 30,000 square feet all the way down to 3,000 square feet to figure out how many dwelling units could be put on a parcel.
But we shouldn't be
So-
figuring that out, we should say what we want.
The build-out study. Go ahead, sir.
No, I just wanted to clarify that, so, I mean, it's,
The square footage isn't driving
I see,
the maximum 100 apartments.
I see,
It's lot coverage,
right.
mixed use, 65%.
I also believe that this was proposed once before, and that the developer mentioned something like, well, that's not financially feasible. Suddenly, that's not an attractive piece of land if you can only put 20 units on it. But he also says it's not, we're not here to accommodate builders and developers, right? We're here to try
Well,
to...
it's the development district, so we're
Right.
looking at everything. It's the business district.
Very good.
Business.
Amy, you,
Yes,
okay.
thank you.
And then
So
Eric.
I had a, I'm sorry. I understand that, based on going to the workshop, that this planning commission makes its recommendation. You vote on something either way. And that the supervisors may opt out of your recommendation.
The supervisors, when they get the recommendation, the final county inputs in our 40-page document, could either have a public hearing, and after hearing the public, make a decision to stand fast with what it is, keep the ordinance the way they want it, and/or make adjustments higher or lower on what our recommendations are. They could.
So you're an advisory
Yeah,
board
we-
and not a governing?
We're not the governing body, that's
Okay.
the supervisors. We're just advisory and
So I don't understand what the impetus to visiting this zoning ordinance is. I'm with this gentleman in that we really need to explore this sewerage and the potential for that before we even address this ordinance. I don't understand the benefit to Milford Township residents or taxpayers. I don't see the point of this exercise. We're spending years and we're making enemies amongst neighbors and we're talking hypotheticals. And I don't think that that is a beneficial exercise for any community, let alone a small rural community. I do understand that it is your prerogative to turn a blind eye to the comprehensive plan. You can opt out and not cooperate with our neighboring municipalities. What I am wondering is when is the appropriate time to consult PennDOT? This development district is on a state and/or federal highway, from my understanding. In the interest of public safety, do we have the roads to accommodate traffic density in this specific area? Added traffic lights to the 3-lane increases response and in-road time to emergency services and access to our hospitals. This community doesn't even have an urgent care that operates on Sundays or Mondays. We are at the mercy of stabilizing people in the back of ambulances. And if you are suggesting that it is appropriate to develop the 3-lane and to put in more traffic lights to accommodate the increased density on these roads, you're setting our township up for liability and/or loss of life as we try to get people to Bon Secours. Every additional traffic light is added time in getting people the services that they need. And I think that is a consideration as well. I don't know when you need to talk to PennDOT. I don't know. I don't know the process. You guys are the planning commission, but please do consider our safety as residents of Milford Township.
understood. Wait, Erica.
I'd like to respond to Amy.
Right.
Is that okay?
Go ahead, Larry, he would like to respond to you, Amy.
I think all the ambulances and EMS vehicles, and I'm not a fireman, but they pretty much run transducers that trip the lights. And
Opticom
it's,
system.
huh?
It's called an Opticom system.
Okay, Opticom system. And we all took our driver's test. What do you do when an emergency vehicle is coming? And I'm fully aware people don't get out of the way. I do it religiously. You know, coming at you, going away from you. You get off the road, let the ambulance go. That's common courtesy, respect, and it is on the driving test back in 1976 when I took mine.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I wasn't as aware of
And
it
as
until
far-
my
yeah.
parents moved into Milford Landing and I watched the ambulances try to get out onto the 3-lane from that designated traffic light, and it's not the perfect scenario they were describing.
And as far as the roads and consulting PennDOT, that would actually have to wait for a physical building plan, not to do an ordinance.
So is it appropriate to tickle the density?
That would have to wait for any plan. You know, if somebody buys a property here, they would have to have PennDOT. There would be a PennDOT study. If it was up on Route 6 on a state road, it would involve PennDOT. If it was like on Old Milford Road, it would involve the township.
But do we set a precedent to tickle zoning in response to a building proposal, or is it the other way around? What's appropriate for our community?
I don't, you were saying asking, consulting PennDOT. That would have to actually have a building plan in place. not
Right, but
for
you're
an
looking at
ordinance.
top-level zoning amendment, so we are addressing
This is
that.
just an ordinance, it's not an actual something being done. That is part of the checks and balances down the road after any ordinance, even as it's at right now. If somebody buys out next to Tractor Supply, PennDOT would have to do a study and a survey before they even set a shovel in there.
Erica, and then this gentleman, and that's it for public comment, because we've got to get to the Snyder
Quick
Farm
comment.
going.
At a past supervisors meeting, when HRG and their representatives were there talking about the sewer plan, and we voiced our concerns, he kept repeating, your protection is in your zoning. And
Thank
it
you.
is.
Sir?
Yeah, my name's Mike, I'm a township resident. I haven't been real involved in this, but through the magic of social media, I've become aware of what a hot topic this is. I haven't seen very many people speaking in favor of this. I've seen a lot of people raising concerns. You spoke earlier about working hard to make a win-win situation. Is it appropriate to request maybe a list of those wins? Are there any wins that you can share with us?
I'm not sure. We're talking about amending the ordinance and
Right,
coming up to
your quote was,
versus-
"I've worked hard to make this a win-win situation."
We're working to analyze everything and make it so that when you do development in a district, like the business district that we have, that it is a combination and/or suitable for the community and for the person who
So
purchased the
generic
property.
win-win,
Yeah,
there's no
it's-
actual list of wins.
We won't know until it's actually done, and we know what the actual
All right,
revenue
thank you
stream
for
and everything. All right, that's it for public comment. Does anybody have any questions about the wording? Even with what Sean said?
Taking it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna remove that. So I'm gonna make a motion that we accept this change and recommendations to the supervisors in the county for approval. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second from Larry. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
One
So,
nay.
4-1, motion passes. This, along with the 40-page write-up, will go to the county and to the supervisors for their consideration and public hearing. Next on the agenda is the county reviews, Snyder property, county comments. And I believe we have a...
Good evening. I'm here actually, Mr.
Yeah,
Snyder
Mr.
is also
Snyder's
here because Mr. Snyder is the trustee of the Richard L. Snyder Trust and Estate. And as such, he's really the property owner. I represent Delaware Hamels Conservancy, which were bequeathed by Mr. Snyder, the farm property to be delivered to Delaware Hamels Conservancy. So those people who weren't here before, I'll just briefly explain that. We are not here seeking any development whatsoever. In fact, one of the reasons why it took us this long, although there are lots of other reasons, was that as part of the delivery of the property, there will be a conservation easement put on the property that prevents the property from being developed. It would allow, there's already a couple homes up there, would allow those to be improved, maybe even replaced. You could even put agricultural buildings in if someone wanted to have another llama farm or a horse farm. But they're not going to be able to subdivide the property or develop it in any way. Am I correct, too?
Correct.
And that was really negotiated between both the Delaware Howlands, who wanted to preserve the property anyway. They are not intending to keep it, however. The easement will be put on the property, and unlikely it will be sold to someone who presumably would be willing to live with those restrictions. And those restrictions get recorded, and they are enforceable for in perpetuity. So the reason why we came here back in April was to the farm is comprised of about 73 acres, and there are 2 large parcels, and then there are 2 very small parcels, one by the entranceway that's about 0.85, I think it is, and one over in Chippy Cole Road that's also under an acre. And we just wanted to take the 2 small properties and combine them with 47 acres, I think it is. I don't have the plan in front of me, they're all here. So that we could report a map, because there's no survey of all the properties. Mr. Snyder acquired these parcels over a period of time, from the 80s up through the 90s. So this would allow that there would be a resulting 2 properties, which quite frankly would be easier to monitor in terms of this conservation easement. We actually got a company that was willing to kind of help, because Delaware Hamels Conservancy is a charity, even though they're going to hopefully get some money out of this property in the long run to continue their mission. Butcher and James, which is not based in this area locally, but has an office in Quakertown. They had done the work on this map. And quite frankly, they did a really good job of surveying it. They were advised to kind of minimally put in some information on it. It did not meet all of the ordinance standards. So we did take it back after the initial comment letter that was written back in May 8th, and we did address a number of those by adding them onto the plan. However, we also asked for waivers on those things that did not apply to a situation where there's absolutely no development being proposed. We brought that back. Another letter was issued by Brian Snyder, dated June 11th, yep. And then there was a last letter written by Michael Brzezinski. And quite frankly, that was written because I spoke with Mike about it. I said, you know, given the circumstances here, I didn't want the letter to be construed that all these things had to be done. So we are asking, I had submitted a written request for the waiver because that's required under the Township's subdivision land development ordinance. And I did file with this. I requested at 4023 that we be granted a waiver on those items. The Planning Commission, I believe the maps are in a complete state except for one small thing. I did agree with Mr. Snyder that the revised date should be put on the plan, and it was not. And with the Township's permission, I was going to actually write in the revised date. I know that it was on May 28th, which is the date that I brought them back, because the person called me before he printed them.
There's actually a note on the plan saying that you delivered it on May 28th.
May 28th. But I think a revised date does make sense because it would show that this is the last plan, so to speak. At least I hope it'll be the last plan. So subject to putting that on there between now and the next supervisors meeting, which is of course this Monday coming up, we would ask if you could approve it with the waivers that were requested.
Sean, did you review the letters?
You good?
Any issues?
The waivers that were requested are all part of the subdivision and development ordinance in lieu of showing the improvements on the property. Aerial photography was used. Sean and I reviewed the map. It does depict all the buildings on the property. Our concern was to depict those buildings to see if there were any potential setback violations. There aren't. So that was really...
We did locate the well and septic, which was not on the original one as well, and I totally agree that that needs to be on there even if there is no development.
Under section 703 of the subdivision and land development ordinance, if the planning commission finds that literal compliance with mandatory provisions would be unreasonable or cause undue hardship to a particular property, and the applicant shows that an alternative would allow for equal or better results, a waiver could be granted. Now, as an advisory body, your job is to make a recommendation to the supervisors as to whether or not the waiver should be granted. In this case, the waiver being, instead of physically showing on the subdivision plan the improvements, they're superimposed by what looks to be like Sean, any comments?
I'd like to make a motion to allow this transaction. What is this?
It'd be a waiver.
A waiver. To allow the waivers for the transfer of the property and forward to the supervisors as such.
Allowing for the superimposing of the improvements.
Exactly.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Subject to the date being...
Subject to the
Subject
May
to the
25th
date.
date.
Second is Kevin / Pat. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Comment here anyway.
I'd like to thank the planning board for your approval.
Thank you, sir.
Also, just so you're aware, this is being conveyed pursuant to court order, because as in the state where we have a charity being the beneficiary, we have to get the Attorney General's approval of everything we do, including the easement. And so,
We're going through all of that.
Right.
Thank you.
and in that easement that's being put on, there is the ability to have community use. If an owner, when they sell it, wishes to use it, and that was somewhat like Dick used to use the farm, that was part of the concept we tried to work out over the years, and we think we've got some good language in there. It's not mandatory, but it allows that use, and we're hoping that there would be some continuation in that when we change hands. But they're gonna always have the easement, and they are responsible to make sure the easement is enforced in perpetuity.
Not the trustee.
Not the
Trustee is just looking to finalize his role in this whole thing. Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda, 5B, the kennel amendment came back from the county with no significant comments. I'd like to make a motion to approve this and send it to supervisors so they can have their public hearing on the amendment for the kennel. Can I get a
Second that.
second from Larry? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion carries. Okay. Well, next one is 5C, the Twin Lakes Water Supply Improvement Project. The county somehow got this before we even saw the package, so they're ahead of the game on this one. Sean, have you had a chance to look at this?
I was actually waiting for Tony to get back and discuss a few concerns I had with it,
Okay.
so, which we went over as far as what is considered a public utility.
Yes.
Do you still have those concerns?
Excuse me?
Do you still have those concerns, or?
Waiting to get a determination on that one.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a public utility or not. I haven't.
Okay.
We just spoke this morning.
All right. So this needs to be tabled until we get that information back. So everybody, we're going to table this one. Those are mine, so I'm going to back.
Okay, this is consistent with the county comprehensive plan and with
The county plan, that huge one. Okay. So everybody read that for the next meeting, so we're going to be all up to speed, and Sean gets his answers. We can be able to talk about that. Next item on the agenda is the board discussion about the annual report and the comprehensive plan. So basically, this is just going to be me talking to you guys. The MCP requires us to have an annual plan of everything we do. We've created a tracker. I've sent it out to Shahana. We're still trying to put everything on there. As you can see, the county puts their own tracking numbers on everything. We're putting tracking numbers on ours. It's in Excel, so we can then filter it down. And by the 1st of March every year, we have to do this written report to the supervisors. We'll have that data already done throughout the year, so we can actually just show them the Excel. Here you go and filter it and show which ones, what stage they're in, if they're at the county, being reviewed here, application stage, and so on and so forth. That's still being hashed out, but that's one of the requirements that we have to do. The other thing is the comprehensive plan from 2006 to 2016, it's out of date. We need to look at it individually, and when we have our workshop on the 8th, I'm guessing it's the 8th, come to the table, figure out what sections we all want to lead, and then engage during that workshop with the township residents, how we're going to get their involvement and documentation. Shahana and myself will support typing after the fact, because obviously not everybody can type and do all that stuff. So I know I'm looking at you, Pat. So just to make your life easier. So review. So the homework is to review the actual Twin Lakes Water Project, the paperwork you have, and the comprehensive plan. And there's quite a few chapters. Pick the chapters that match what you like to do. So it'll make it easier. And the ones that we haven't assigned anybody to that are difficult, we'll just draw straws.
Is that available on the website, the comprehensive plan?
I got it online. I don't remember where I got it. So, and that's all I have. Does the board have anything before adjournment? Anybody want to make a motion that we adjourn?
I'd make a motion we adjourn.
Second? Kevin? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.